Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready for more propaganda? Well, you're in the wrong place at the right time. Colombo Chronicles is for critical thinkers. Let's welcome the consumer advocate for justice. Here's the Rose, Rose Colombo.
Hey everyone, it's the Rose Colombo, the legendary advocate for justice. Some call in the media the crusader for justice. Long time been doing newsletters, public speaking, radio shows on AM, FM, now podcasts, and also created, produced, and hosted Issues of the Day and also Women Fight Back. And we discuss the issues of the day that are happening today, such as corruption, injustices against innocent people. So that's what I've been doing, and it's been quite a journey. And in 2024, I hope to produce my legendary story of how I ended up from being a innocent, naive believer in the Constitution, in the country, and the Bill of Rights, due process of law, probable cause, search warrants that have now turned into no-knock search warrants. And I think it's going to get worse with 87,000 armed IRS agents, which actually began under the Obama regime. And it was his idea because I think it was 17,000 at that time, but they added a few thousand to the numbers. So we're going to see what happens with that, because I don't know who's funding them, because Americans are going broke with the skyrocketing cost of housing and electricity, gas, excessive food costs, and also the destruction through what they tell us are natural disasters of the farms that were burned down and the crops, and then BG and China swooped in and bought the largest food plant that operates in America, Smithfield. And they also destroyed the crops, so the farmers couldn't survive. So they probably picked that up for below value as well, sent them on their way, and probably had no other skills, because that is their expertise, most of them generational. And that is very sad to turn them into. What do you think they're going to turn them into? And don't forget, many of these lands not only grow natural food that they want to sell to you as GMO non-nutritional food with no nutritional value to keep your immune system from all of those viruses that are being researched and escaping suddenly in 2021, 22, and 23 from these biochemical labs. And don't forget that the CCP was just caught in, I think, the state of California, operating a research lab right here in our own golden state, being reduced down to it's not even silver anymore. Whatever's below silver, that's where we're at, because we are filled with illegals and fake refugees who came here not to assimilate, but to impose their ideologies on us, Chinese nationals and spies buying up our land, our homeland, which I find all of this to be high crimes and misdemeanors and sedition, and at least it appears to me that way, and allegedly treasonous to sell out our homeland so that they don't have to nuke us. They can just come on in through the open borders and the ports and the airstrips and just swoop up our homeland and then come to our doors and knock them down with armed IRS agents, which I don't think is in the Constitution, any of this. So maybe they're reading a different Constitution. Maybe they're confused with the Chinese CCP's manifesto, or maybe the Muslim Brother Care's ideologies, and both of them pretty much state and are written and stated strategically to wipe out America and all of Western civilization, overpopulate, dominate, and conquer. And isn't that what they're doing? As the middle class becomes poor and crime increases and their cities become ghettos. Is anybody tired of this yet? Or is it just me? Well, I didn't mean to rant on because we're going to have a great show today. I have a great guest, that's a return guest, and she is an author. Her whole family's generational from Hollywood and film and books and so forth. And she has a wealth of information that really hasn't been told as much as it should, in my opinion, because it's so intriguing and interesting how in the past, which her parents knew about, and she did as a little girl, how this all came about and who was who and who got injured and hurt through, not winning their Oscars or being avoided and so forth. So it's very, very intriguing and interesting because Hollywood is part of America. And so we need to clean up Hollywood and get some good movies out there again and clean up the cartoons, Disney. Anyway, so let me tell you a little bit about the author. Born in Chicago, Judy Watson has always lived in the realm of creativity and the arts. She studied writing at Arizona State University, and she has written short stories and presented a small narrative history. Her brother was an illustrator in film and TV, and her husband was an award-winning TV cameraman. Her son is presently a writer and executive producer at DreamWorks, and he may have moved on. I'll have to ask her about that because he's been promoted to a lot of different things since she wrote the book in areas of his career. Well, her daughter is a gifted artist and photographer who worked for years in animation. Animation's a whole different animal, too. You have to be super, super creative to do animation. When her mother left hidden photographs, books, letters, manuscripts, tapes, and diaries to Watson, she knew she needed to make this compelling firsthand look inside the golden age of Hollywood available to the public. So she was more like Sherlock Holmes than Watson. She became a history detective on Hollywood. 3 grandchildren and currently lives with her 2 dogs and 3 cats in Westlake Village, a beautiful neighborhood where she has been for the past 47 years. Wings and Other Recollections of Early Hollywood is her first book. And so I will tell you just a little bit about the book when we come back from this important message. And speaking of books, you are listening to 5-star review, International Irwin Award winner, the only person other than one other in 46 years to get 2 Irwin Awards. And so I want to remember Irwin Zucker, who was very popular among the media in Hollywood for, probably 60-some years, who passed away before, I believe it was right before Christmas of 2022. And so then, on that note, I wrote the book, Obamasaurus, just for you. And Obamasaurus is a fictional political satire with an Orwellian twist and has a message at the end of the book that critics say readers will be very concerned about: our humanity and our survival. So will we survive what's happening today? Because they may create famine. They may create thirst. They may create smart cities and kick you out of your house with those 87,000 armed IRS agents. So a book you need to read and you need to share with your family, friends, and the world.
Obamasaurus, the new book by Rose M. Colombo, is an updated version of a political satire that reflects the political roadmap of today's world, written with an Orwellian twist. Will humanity survive or suffer depopulation or extinction? Obamasaurus by Rose M. Colombo, available at Amazon.com.
The Justice Club is back on Colombo Chronicles Live podcast. Join Rose Colombo at noon and find out what tips she will provide in a world of little justice.
Colombo. Colombo Chronicles Live. Colombo is on their trail. Listen up at Colombo Chronicles Live.
That's right. Listen up, because there's so many injustices and corruption today in all levels of government, private industry. But don't give up, because there are still some good, honest companies and CEOs that are not part of this Agenda 21 who want to wipe us out. We don't want to be wiped out. We want to live. So fight back, America. That's why I wrote the first book, Fight Back Legal Abuse. And that was how to protect yourself from your own attorney, not just from the opposing attorney. And also a lot of tips went into that. It went global and viral. And now you're going to be able to read Fight Back Legal Abuse 2 coming soon, hopefully before Christmas in 2023. So watch for that. And you can also go to Amazon and Barnes & Noble or your bookstore and order Is America Under Martial Law, which creates a theory and also facts and laws and quotes from credible politicians and business people who question, is America under martial law, under a secret executive order that was not disclosed to the American people, maybe through the COVID era, starting in 2019, or maybe even a little before that, and that indefinitely detained us as prisoners and hostages of the U.S. government under the authority of NIH, CDC, WHO, and BG. And so was that constitutional? And is it constitutional to force every person on the planet to use their arms as a human commodity for an experimental jab or prescription by the United States government or any Western civilization or any other country for that matter? Because you are granted by God your immune system and your DNA not to be altered by humans, but to be left alone, because you are created by God through God's DNA. And also, you are created with an immune system that requires nutritional supplements and vitamins and natural food. So that's how people have survived since time began, since Adam and Eve, by staying healthy, marrying one man, one woman to create more children, more babies, more children to populate the earth. And there's plenty for everyone if we didn't have dark forces coming against us with artificial intelligence and advanced technology that can be used for our destruction of the American way of life and all of Western civilization, which would destroy freedom, liberty, and rights, and individualism, and to make your own choices and exercise free will, because no man or woman, according to the Constitution, has authority to deny you or prohibit that from making your own choices about yourself and your children, your minor children. And so we have a lot of issues on the plate, but let's get started and enter into the world of authors and experts with our fantastic guests. I just told you a little bit about Judy Watson and her great book and how she has written Wings, and a little bit about Richard Arden, and we will talk about her, who was the star of Wings. Hello, Judy. Are you there?
I'm here, Rose. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me perfectly?
I sure can. I'm sitting here listening to you, and I love everything you say because it's so true. And it seems like every day we learn something we never wanted to learn, in the news. And it's not usually good, but it's very fascinating and interesting, isn't it, Rose, as to what's happening in this country?
We are living in challenging times, and we are the only country in the world that has the most freedom from tyrannical leaders. But we're letting tyrannical leaders come into our country for many years now especially since 1993. They are seeing, and they outsource our jobs, manufacturing companies, and our intellectual property. And then they sold copycats of our fashion world designers, and sold them for less money as quantity, not quality, and actually as a fraud on the black market. And that hurt our American industry to the same country who we made wealthy, who is now buying up our land, our farmland, our food plants, and so much more. And many Chinese nationals are here doing that, along in some Middle Easterners who are also trying to purchase land with water rights in Arizona. Thank God the Arizona governor and legislators prohibited them from doing that, but they didn't prohibit the Chinese leaders and nationals from buying up acres and acres of our land, along with individual billionaires such as BG, and to create their smart cities and force people to only be able to buy, who can afford to buy, the GMO non-nutritional fake meats and fake foods. So, and I believe they are linked to Monsanto, because they had gone into Africa, destroyed farms there, and thousands of people lost their farms, and many, many, many committed suicide after that.
Well, let me ask a question here. I think, because I did my own research several years ago, that Bill Gates, we're talking about Bill Gates, I believe he's very involved with Monsanto. He may even own them. He usually buys things. He and George Soros are very similar, because they buy things and then they hide their names so that you can't be saying, oh, well, look what you did. But they're generally behind it. They use other names. They use other people. And they're very devious. And for people out there who are interested, start watching. It's very fascinating. And but I was reading lately that here in Northern California especially, they're becoming very aware of what's happening to their agricultural lands, and they're really trying to stop it. And thank God they are. But the problem I have with almost all of these people is that they're so slow. I don't understand it. Is it because there's money involved that they're taking, and they want to take the money and then finally, oh, look what that they get involved? Or is it that they're just honestly that slow in understanding what's really happening? Because I think most of us are very aware now, Rose, of what's been happening these last, I would say, 10, 20 years, And
heck, I've been doing this for 30 years, Judy, closing these, because when I was on AM/FM radio, these whistleblowers from the White House who retired to become whistleblowers because they knew what the government was plotting, found me, because no MSM station would let them on the air to discuss these issues, and they still don't today. And some of them have passed away, of course, or are elderly now. And well, because they were older than I was. And I was like everyone else who was like, gosh, could this be real? That can't be. Our government wouldn't do that. No, But then I was involved in exposing the corruption in the court system. So I had an open mind, because I thought, well, if the courts can do this to innocent people, and they've been doing it and getting away with it, what can our government do to us? Because the judicial system is part of the Constitution and the three branches of government, so they're government too. So when I looked at the whole picture, I saw a big picture of, my God, I cannot be the only one who has had these injustices done against me and my children. And so I started the whole grassroots movement, and that's how it all started, was with this grassroots movement. And it wasn't easy, Judy, because most Americans did not want to believe it, or they were afraid to speak out. And but I did a lot of research, interviewed hundreds of people around this country, helped hundreds or maybe thousands, but with writings and everything, probably millions. And so I was even invited by a editor who saw me on television and asked me to do a news column. So I did that for 2 years. I created One Woman's Opinion, and I discussed injustices in the court system, which didn't make them happy, of course, the court system. and or the entire judicial system, for that fact.
Well, you know, I worked for a law firm.
Well, I just wanted to say I had to suffer and my children a lot because of the exposure I was doing and the media giving me my organization so much attention, even on front covers of the newspaper and quoting me and everything. But I just thank God that he gave me that back door and wisdom to do what I did, even though there was a lot of heartache and suffering that when they came against me and my family, because that's what happens. That's my point. That's what happens when you speak out. They come for you.
No, I totally agree. I worked in a law firm for 10 years. We were a defending law firm. And but what was fascinating at that time, I don't think I ever told you this story. We defended the insurance companies who had become aware that after we had the amnesty where we allowed, 3 million Mexican people into California, and they brought their families, that doctors, lawyers, physicians, who knows, politicians, they set up groups, and in those groups they would arrange for fraudulent accidents. And what we did was investigate the fraudulent accidents. Unfortunately, the insurance companies usually paid out the small ones, but the large ones we had to legally go to court over. It was a really fascinating journey into how much fraud there was going on. We're going back to the 1980s here. So I got to see it firsthand. And you know how it got stopped? It got stopped because the insurance companies got tired of paying all the bills, and they finally stepped forward and they passed bills that broke apart all these groups so they could no longer, set up accidents and have the people, phony accidents, phony places to get your car fixed, phony body parts, phony doctors, phony psychologists, and everybody did it. And the worst part was that I was often on the phone talking to these people, knowing I was talking to completely dishonest people, and they didn't care, Rose. They only stopped when they were made to stop. And I'm looking now at all the crime that's going. You're right. And right now I'm looking at all the crime that's happening, and I got robbed in Home Goods a couple of months ago. And I said to myself, this will stop when the insurance companies get tired of paying out for all these goods. And sure enough, I heard today that up in, I guess, San Francisco or someplace, they're finally going, or here, Los Angeles, suddenly they're going to have motivated Crime Stoppers. But they didn't have any motivated Crime Stoppers for how long now? How many years now? Until it got to a place where they could see that there was too much money being made too easily, and maybe they weren't getting a part of it. I don't know. But I did lose my respect in general for people. I saw situations that happened, and it really was who you knew, okay? And I myself...
Well, it's always been that way. I worked in the sheriff's department, and if you were a politician or connected, you could get your tickets reversed. You didn't have to pay them, and they'd disappear. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on and has been going on for a very, very long time. I was just a teenager at the time. Going to college.
I would meet people who would brag to, No, there were people, and here, generally speaking, the people who were actually the worst people, in my opinion, were the contractors that worked for Los Angeles, because they would hire people from Mexico who they knew could not even understand directions. They let go of those people who could work and do, and knew that they were doing something wrong, and therefore these people would build tunnels and bridges and homes illegally, and the contractors made nothing but money. When the homes fell apart and the bridges collapsed, and the garages collapsed like over at Northridge University, nobody was guilty. But
well,
they
the problem too is that all these homes sliding down the hills is because these contractors and developers are going in and they're adding dirt or sand or whatever, so they're not built on a solid foundation. Pours, it's going to weaken the earth underneath the house, and eventually that house is going to go sliding down the hill.
I think it's been going on so long. Where I live in Westlake Village, this was Chumash Indian land. And the very first winter we were here, we had terrible rains, and my front lawn sunk. and I learned that all the land in this particular development had been filled. All this dirt had been brought in, and we were all lucky because we survived. But that's when I began to be aware of what was happening. And the city would sign off on things that they were supposed to come out. Was your water working? Was this working? They would sign off and things weren't working. And then we had to begin to have lawyers that lived here threaten lawsuits, lawsuits against the city, lawsuits against the gas company, lawsuits against the fact that we didn't have any insulation in our homes. And I thought to myself, thank God some lawyers live here, because this was what was, and the city signed off on every permit that was necessary. So the city was well in on what was happening. And after this was built by American Hawaiian, pretty much they disappeared, and I often wondered why. Well, but perhaps there wasn't.
It reminds me of when I lived on the top of the hill in Anaheim Hills. You could see all of Orange County below. It was city lights at night. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful, huge home on 2 acres of land, and beautiful 1-story, which was really nice because you could just, of course, I had a housekeeper come in once a week at that time, at that time. But anyway, it was a beautiful, beautiful home. And the judicial system stole my property. That was paid in full, get that one. And so I've never been, refunded my community assets from my home that they sold out from under me. That was paid in full. But bottom line is that they had all these eucalyptus trees. So if you think the government is 100% looking after you, you better also think the other side of the story too. Or are they looking after themselves when you own a high-priced piece of property or you have assets and money in the bank? So it's really, really, that's how I wrote the book, Fight Back Legal Abuse, How to Protect Yourself from Your Own Attorney. Because when it comes to money, they go crazy. They lose their minds. They become dark. Innocent people go into politics, Judy, and they really want to help, and then they get offered all this money in a secret room in Vegas or something, and for their campaigns. Even prosecutors now appears through the Open Society, and that should never ever happen in America, where prosecutors in one party or both parties, as far as I'm concerned, but especially just the one party, are accepting 6- and 7-figure dollar numbers as donations to their campaign, because to me that is political influence, and that is gaining. I
have a different point of view. My point of view is that, first of all of our law comes from English law, and I was going to refer to the book in the Gabors, and women in particular under English law were chattel. And what I learned through the years of myself was that simply we really don't have the rights that we think we do, because the government, as you say, can come in. They are underhanded many times, and well, here's a little story. My mother had dementia. I finally had her put under an examination hold at a psychiatric hospital, but I knew she had dementia. By this point, Rose, I had my name on all her assets. I had full power of attorney. I had full power for a health directive. And then they said to me, we won't release your mother to go to a home. Why? They said, you must become her guardian. And I knew that they were doing this because they went through her bank records and they could see they have that power, that she had some money, and they wanted that money. They wanted the state to take all her assets. Yeah.
Not just God, but AI also knows every hair on your head now.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So basically I had no choice if I wanted to get my mother out of the hospital except to become her guardian. Then I had to go out and find a lawyer, which wasn't too difficult, and find one that was not too expensive. Long story short, she didn't need a guard. She died, Rose, by the time the guardianship finally was done. And then the lawyer who had been paid came to me. I love the story, and he asked for more money. And I said, she's dead, and I have paid you in full. Well, he said, you never know. Something could happen. So you know what I did, and everybody listening, if you have a court in case, always keep a file, always know the case number. I called down to the court. I talked to the clerk. I gave her the case number. She looked it up, and she said, well, this is over. This person is dead. And I said, thank you very much, but the attorney wants more money. And she said, well, you know what? Let's just put it in the dead file and end it. And I said, thank you. And we did. And she was honest, and thank God. And
well, Judy, that is an amazing story because, and it's so true. People don't realize that even when somebody dies, they still try to make money off the dead.
I know.
It's a true story. And my son, who passed away, God bless him, he's in heaven, but he didn't pay his tickets because he died, and I didn't know anything about him. So the police kept coming to my door because if you don't pay your tickets, you get a warrant. And the police kept coming after my son passed away and asking for him, and I kept telling them he passed away, and they kept saying, oh, but he's so young. And I said, yes, but young people pass away too. And it was really annoying and hurtful to keep having them come to my door. And so, my God, you think he had, you'd think he had been a serial killer or something, But that's what happens in small towns when they don't commit very many crimes. But so they go after.
Well, I do think.
But listen, Judy, let me finish. So what I did was I finally got tired of this, and I wrote them, the court, a letter, and I said, no disrespect to law enforcement, because I support law enforcement, no disrespect, except bad apples, and no disrespect to my son who passed away on such and such a date. I said, please stop wasting the taxpayers' money and my time and causing more pain for me. And I said, because you are chasing a ghost. I said, check your computer. And so I never heard from them again. I said, you're chasing a ghost.
Well, there's so many things that I've found out, and in particular, though, working in the law firm for 10 years opened my eyes to so much, and it was not pleasant. And basically, here's another story. My daughter worked for an exclusive designer she was in Venice. She was a designer of children's clothing. It was a beautiful store. And this is how the woman did it. I don't know if I hope she's not in business anymore. That was 20 years ago. But anyways, Jackie got sick. And she had hernia surgery. She was 100% covered because she had been working there for a year. Jackie was the citizen who worked there, but the woman also had a lot of illegals that worked there that she paid under the table who had no benefits whatsoever. I was aware of that, so was my daughter. So in order to present herself to the public as a legitimate person, this woman kept on about maybe 4 or 5 girls who were American citizens, and the rest were not. Now, I get a call from the insurance company asking me, Stan, that I have to pay completely for her hernia surgery. I said, what are you talking about? She has been there for a year. She's got a 1040. She's paid her taxes. She has benefits. And he said, I don't care. You got to pay. And he hangs up on me. So I had my attorney call her. And, he said to her, that's terrific, but I'm going to have to turn you in for hiring illegals. And, because obviously you do, and he knew the names through me of the girls. The next day I get a phone call from the insurance company. Guess what? You're 100% covered.
Well, what's interesting, too, about insurance companies, now that you brought them up, is that many of them are so corrupt because if there's I paid on a life insurance policy for years, and, and every year the rate goes up, and it starts low.
I often wondered about that. No, I've never had a life insurance.
But it was just a small one, just to be able to pay for any additional expenses, Well, it was just, I did it so long ago, and it was like, I think it was like $10,000 or $15,000 or something like that. It wasn't a whole lot because I already bought my plot long ago and stuff, So I just wanted to make sure they didn't have to pay anything. And so what happened is that I'm all the way up and I'm paying all this money now, and because it's gone up, every year into this same insurance company. And so finally I started calling and asking questions. And guess what? Well, as you get, you get to be a senior. Well, they pay less
double your
money
rate
than the actual policy.
Yeah.
So like
almost like a term insurance. Yeah.
Like a $15,000 insurance could go, I don't know, maybe down to like what, $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. I mean, is that not a ripoff? They are not explaining that to people.
Well, Dick had term insurance. He worked at KTLA, and when he died, he was 70, and they deducted money from his term insurance. I said, what do you know? Why? Oh, they said, well, he was too old. He was 70, and because he was 70, they just decided that he wasn't entitled to the full amount of the term insurance. Yeah, they deducted, I think, at least $5,000 off the term insurance. They just arbitrarily did what they wanted.
On the phone that they will reduce as over the years they start reducing the amount that they're going to pay you.
Correct. So I said, if he died at 65, he was actually penalized for dying and working there for 50 years. I guess that was a problem. And on
the phone, Judy, I said, you know what? I go, you need to explain this to your customers before you sign them up because that is non-disclosure. And I said, and it's misleading. And I said, and not only that money could have been put into a bank account, when we had real interest rates paying out, or into an IRA, and they would have made more money than your insurance policy.
Well, I think we can apply the same thing to annuities. Never buy an annuity. My poor mother got trapped in one, and I think she put in $25,000. When she died, it was $40,000. Well, guess what? When you buy an annuity policy, the insurance company gets a full write-off, so they take a percentage. Then the IRS comes in, they take another big chunk. By the time I paid everybody off, I think I got $15,000. So basically, my mother actually lost money. She actually lost money in the annuity. And that's one of the things they don't tell people when they buy annuities. That's why you see a lot of ads, don't buy an annuity. This is the reason why, because of the taxation of that annuity when that person dies, which often destroys the capital that was built up in the annuity. So the annuity is made there. It's meant for the insurance companies, for the IRS, it's for the government. But, I think we all have to make ourselves aware of these things. I've learned a lot of things just because of my own experiences. But I think
that's the best learning. We're not going to learn them in college. Everybody puts up their titles there, and all they do is discuss, their opinions on these issues. They've never put their shoes on and had to walk through these trials and tribulations and experiences where they were actually experienced injustice, experienced losses of finances.
I know there are no studies in this, and there should be. Everyone should have to take for at least 1 year legal courses in corporate studies and in new insurance.
They do not teach this. They do not teach this in law school. These are things that people learn because it's not public knowledge. The legal system remains a mystery for a reason. And they're always changing the laws for a reason. They never delete a law. They just keep adding laws that you have no idea of what the new law is until you violate it. And you find yourself in court paying fines or being arrested.
Yeah. We had so many cases when I first came into that law firm, and the law, every week the laws changed. And so they would give out printouts, and the printouts constantly were changing from the company as the law changed. You're right. People really didn't know, and those who could took advantage. And the insurance companies, in my opinion, were the worst because they were so wealthy. And the insurance companies, in my personal opinion, own America. Because when they get really tired of all the robbery that's going on right now, they're going to crack down. You'll see things happen to that advantage. I wish it were the politicians. I wish it were the government. But it really comes down to those who have the power. And the power in this country is in the hands. I mean, let's look at let's see, one insurance company, I won't name them, but they own not only stocks, they own bonds, they own mutual funds, they own tax-free funds, they own buildings, they own banks, they own you name it. And then they hide behind those things. People don't know how wealthy the insurance companies are, so you can't protect yourself against them. But
I do blame the politicians, though, because the politicians do not do anything but hold these hearings, and they put on these big theatrics. Most of them are lawyers. Many are doctors. And guess who's running the entire country? Lawyers. Judges are lawyers. Tutors are lawyers. DAs are lawyers. Public defenders are lawyers. Justices are lawyers. And most of your legislators end up being lawyers who are elected into office. And that's why I led the movement to vote for Trump in 2015, when everybody wasn't going to vote for him and said he was a joke, it's a big circus, he's just doing it for attention, whatever they wanted. I started a movement because I had like 660,000 followers at that time, and it was moving up, boy. That was great until I mentioned Dr. F and Stevie, and I got suspended from there. But you know how everybody did if you mentioned any of those things.
I
you
think
can't even mention them today. But my point is, Judy, that I said on my post, I said, if you like him or don't like him, it doesn't matter. He is a businessman. Bottom line is he loves America, and the bottom line is he knows how to add and subtract and balance a budget, and that's what we need right now. And he did it. He didn't balance the budget.
I'm not going to disagree with anything.
Made the economy strong.
And they didn't like this. I've never in my life, and I'm almost hesitant to say that, I've never seen anything like the way they've gone after him. And it's just like, I think we're all compelled to watch television.
Yeah. 24/7 for 7 years.
Okay.
Who gets treated like that 24/7, your whole family, for 7 years in America? This is unbelievable. And
but
that's
here's
why
what I want to say.
Because I just want to say, Judy, and then I'll let you talk. I just want to say no one should be harassed and bullied and threatened while you're a sitting president like he was while he was in office, even to be assassinated by Iran. China joined Iran to take us down with the U.S. dollar by devaluing it, which was George Soros' agenda. And he stated it on video. I watched the video a couple of times, and he said his goal was to, like he did to other countries, devalue their money and destroy them. He was going to devalue the U.S. dollar, and he was not kicked out of our country or confronted by our country leaders for doing this, because he donates to everything, and so to their causes and campaigns, and he has over 200 nonprofit organizations. And so he, everyone knows that it was alleged in the news, Open Society that he funds was funding BLM and Antifa to burn down cities and kill and injure people and vehicles and so forth. So my bottom point is that this whole nightmare is about the lawyers, the AMA, the American Medical Association, and the ABA, American Bar Association, who they don't speak out a word. You don't even hear anything about them coming off the news. Nothing. Zilch. They are quiet about everything. And so we have three branches of government, which I stated in my book, Fight Back Legal Abuse, and warned Americans. We have three classes in America: the very wealthy, which is 1%ers. Then we have the middle class. You can be upper or middle. And then you have the poor. The upper can buy justice, and they do. The middle class can buy some justice because you own a home, you have a car, you have some jewelry you can sell, you have bonds or whatever, and so forth, stock, whatever, that they can pay for the legal fees. So they'll take your case, and then you have, and you may end up homeless, but they'll take your case. You can get some justice sometimes, but justice is for some, S-O-M-E, and some, S with a $sign, $U-M, justice for some and some. And the poor, of course, they don't get any justice because they end up plea bargaining or doing community service or whatever. And so what we have here is we have in a government that was morphing into a two-tier justice system for the rich and poor in the 90s when the Clintons came into office. And then when Obama came into office, I wrote that in 2009, we are morphing into a one-tier justice system because they are using executive orders to bypass Congress and the Constitution and the will of the American people, because Congress is the only one who can make laws, and the Constitution requires Congress review, read, and study, and debate, and make sure that those laws and regulations and fees and fines and penalties are in accordance with the United States Constitution and the will of the people, and have common sense, fairness, equity, justice, and morals. And they haven't done any of that over the past few decades.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, when did all this begin? Because it just seems to me, I never heard of so many executive orders until, Trump did a number of them, but what's his name? Biden does nothing but executive orders.
Executive orders were intended to do administrative orders.
That's what.
Administrative
I don't recall them being used. Not
to make law. The Constitution is clear who is to make law, but I blame the Congress because the Congress did not stand up and defend their duties, who are the lawmakers. So if they don't want to be the lawmakers and do the work and read Obamacare's 2,700 pages and study each law, mandate, regulation, fine, penalty, taxes, then they should have just walked away and gave job to someone who would read, because that's what they're paid to do, read and study. And that's what they're paid to do by the taxpayers. Huge amounts of money, plus pensions, vacation, and all the time they take off in between. So, and travel and so forth. So, in my opinion, if they don't want to respect the United States Constitution, then we have no government, because they swore to do that, to uphold, protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution and secure borders to protect the American people. So if they don't want to do that, then they should all resign, because we no longer have a government, because the Constitution lays out the branches of government that have the power. Everybody else, like CDC, NIH, all these WHO and all that, are funded by private persons like Bill Gates and George Soros, the wealthy Klaus Schwab, and all these types of people who have a lot of money, and then some of the taxpayer money. But they are not part of the government. They are branches of the government, and they can be defunded. And everybody's so scared of them, when it's all the Congress has to do is say, that isn't constitutional, you're fired, we're getting a new director who will uphold our Constitution, or else we're defunding your department. That's how I feel about it. Now, you have the floor.
Well, I think for me, first, I come from a different place, in the sense that I think that law has never been quite equal. I was going to talk with you about women in particular, certainly did not have equal justice or equal rights. And that's kind of interesting to me, because the women's movement is suddenly dying down again, and we're seeing all this happening with these transsexual boys playing women's sports, and slowly but surely it's coming around. Oh, yeah, that's really a man who wanted to become a woman, but he has the biological body build of a man, and he will always have that. So, now they're beginning to, understand that. But why does it even have to take this kind of a road? I think people like George Soros really just delight in giving money, being very underhanded, and turning society upside down on its head. and then watching with glee as all the fundamental values disappear, or if they do come back, people have to fight like hell to get even a small percentage back. For me, I don't quite understand why. That to me is the mind of a psychopath. And what is the enjoyment that he gets out of that? But he does. That's my opinion. You're talking about what is fun.
Sociopaths, Judy, they don't have a conscience, and they justify what they're doing as a good thing and a benefit to society to depopulate them. And that's a depopulation program along with Planned Parenthood, as well as an organ harvesting business for big profits.
For me, Planned Parenthood was okay.
So
I saw Planned Parenthood very different than you did. Okay, Reagan outlaws fetal, using it's illegal to use fetal cells, and Reagan outlaws this, as I recall. I looked into it. Planned Parenthood made their money not by the abortions. They made their money by selling fetal cells because, honest to God, they're used by scientists, they're used by hospitals. They're needed. And then, too, and body parts. I was going to say, I know a girl who works for a huge hospital. I won't say its name, but that is her job. She buys organs. She buys body parts. Because people need kidneys. People need livers. People need hearts. People need... And babies supply eyes and ears and
babies in America. So we're going to just kill off the babies, the natural-born Americans, because they need all these organs.
Rose, they took them to court. They took Planned Parenthood to court, and all the media showed was that Planned Parenthood won. But what they didn't show was that they were then taken back to court, and they lost, and they did pay millions, and they did admit to the fact that they were selling commercially the body parts of babies. And this is why late-term abortion... They can sell and make a profit. They don't care about the woman. They don't care about her medical condition. They don't care even. The abortion is nothing for them. They make their big money through the sale of the fetal materials, the cells, the organs, the body parts. And this is what really got to me, because when Obama made us federally responsible for them, that meant that they could go in and do what they were doing, make tremendous profits. God knows who they were paying off. And all of it was kept under the rug so that it looked like what we were doing was taking away from women the right to have an abortion. That is not what it was ever about to me. It was not about that at all.
You're so right, Judy. You are absolutely right. It was never about that. And we never encouraged young people before that. If you got pregnant, you could go have an adoption. But if you had incest or you were raped or you were in ill health or something,
I think there's many times good reasons for abortion. Yeah, I think you should have a choice. I've always thought that.
But I mean, I'm not judging anyone. I don't, it's their choice, and but I also wanted to point out, Judy, that the seniors and adult women who promoted this, like the former president of Planned Parenthood and her family, and HRC and so many others, NP, and so forth, so many of them did not have abortions. They gave birth and they have grandchildren now. But they're telling everybody else to get an abortion. I mean, even Bill Gates funds more money to Planned Parenthood and WHO than anybody else. And to
so here's another question. Here's a question, Rose. I didn't pay attention.
I just wanted to say really quick that he funds them, and yet these people all have children and grandchildren.
Well, because they feel they can afford them. And that brings me around to the fact that I'm going to say that I was completely ignorant that the largest proportion of abortions were among black women. I really had no idea. So I'm glad to have learned that. And so that's very interesting that they felt and because there was that horrible, the Clintons were the ones who introduced the single women getting money, but they couldn't have a man in the house. So they could have each child they got more money for. And then they talk about what happened to the institution of the family. What happened? You took the money is what happened. And then you put yourself into that position is what happened. And that you didn't fight back or think intelligently or say to yourself, well, wait a minute, this is part of a plan to get rid of men in the households. These are households without men. These are fatherless children who will grow up, and we can do what we want with them. And that is exactly what has happened. And I just never understood. I said to myself, then up at the top, those black men who are up at the top are going along and taking money and helping to do this to their very own people. And that's what bothers me tremendously. Because if they are so concerned about family, then stop these laws and stop giving money and allow men to be married, or live with women.
You're so right, Judy, and I really appreciate what your points are because they're so important and things that we all have something to offer about our points of view. People do not have to agree with us. Everything said on Colombo Chronicles is is not medical, political, financial, or legal advice, but it's a dissemination of information.
Well, I think people have needs, and people need to know that they feel safe, and someone reaches out to them and says, here's something for you. I really want to help you. And that's the hook. And then comes the line that when you get into that, you find out, wait a minute, I just gave up something I really didn't want to give up in order to get what I needed. And that is also part of what government does. And that to me is the most reprehensible thing of all. But I see it. We all see it all the time. And
and that's why they're silencing us so that we don't provide this information to the younger people because they are only getting one side of the story from the government and the public schools today and from media. So they don't want they don't want them educated with the other side of the story so they can do critical thinking because it's almost a crime to do critical thinking today.
But I'm going to tell you one wonderful thing to own I got to end the program. I got to tell you this. My daughter was signing release papers. My grandson is in a Catholic private school, and next week the entire class, 300 of these sophomores, are going to the Holocaust Museum for the day.
Oh, well, I went there. It's great.
Which I think is a wonderful experience for them. Every single one of them is required to go so that they will understand and know that this happened and it's never to be repeated again. And I was happy. And this is a Catholic school, so it's in the Valley.
Well, human rights, Judy, is everybody in the world. Communist countries, their poor citizens are trying to fight for it, and they end up in prison or tortured or whatever, and punished. And so we're the last hurrah here for speaking out our truth. And everyone else, who can agree or not agree is fine. We don't have a problem with that. It's our truth, your truth, and what we experienced in life and what we think. And everybody else's opinions are welcome too. We're not condemning anybody or judging anybody. But one of the things I wanted to mention really quick, because we're running out of time, like you said.
I know never
that
got to the Gabors.
Jaja Gabor and was their family was very poor when they came here, and they got involved in Hollywood, as we all know. So next time we talk, I do want to talk about that, because it's our topic.
Well, truthfully, I know.
I did want you to mention about, I didn't know this, and you brought it to my attention, that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you read her book, and what was her, what did she fight back and responsible for women?
And this is one of the greatest things she ever did. In 1971, I found it today, Reed versus Reed. Women could not own anything. We were chattel in this country, and if your husband died, you were not allowed to own his property. It was now going to be taken over and run by a bank or a lawyer, and you would lose all your rights that you were not entitled to. She went in and she took a man's case because it also applied to men, and she won. But that right also applied to women. And since 1971, because of this woman, we all have the right to own, for our husbands or our sons or our daughters, that which they have left to us. But that right was not in this country beforehand. I mean, that's why I say a lot of stuff, I should go back and study the things she did. She did marvelous things for this country. But she said one thing, and this is my ending here, and that she said when she did Roe versus Wade, she said herself that she knew it was not part of the Constitution. She always expected it to be overturned. She said unless it becomes part of the Constitution. How many years did they have to make it part of the Constitution? And they didn't. Nobody wanted to do it. So when Trump came in and he turned it back to the states, my dears, listening, it was always a state's right. It was never the federal government's right because it is not part of the Constitution. But you had the years and years and years, people listening, to make it such. So don't be angry with Trump or the Supreme Court. You failed as people to make yourselves heard and to get what you needed to have. And it could have been done. You talk about all these hearings and these lawyers and all these things. Why in the world was it not made into part of the Constitution? Simply because of the money involved and the people who worked for the Catholic Church and the Muslims that came into the country and other religions and the Orthodox Jewish people who absolutely do not believe in any of this type of thing. So that's why if you don't fight for your rights, if you don't make them happen, you're going to lose them. That's how I see it,
I appreciate your information, Judy. You're just a wealth of information, and I love it. And let's do it again, and we'll talk about Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and you can tell us more about her because I don't know that much about her, and I didn't read her book, so I would be very interested in
I
hearing.
think the one thing to know about her, which it looks like, I am Jewish, she could not even get accepted into the college of her choice because she was Jewish. That's how much, there's so much anti-Semitism in this country. So what can I say?
Yeah, a lot of
it's always been.
Let's talk again, and let's do it again. Maybe next month we can squeeze in. How's that?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. I'd love to talk about her. I'll read her books again, read her the things that she did. And also, we have to talk about Scalia because he was just the opposite of everything she stood for, and they were the best of friends. That was amazing.
Yeah, and I love Scalia, too. So,
and
God
he was
bless
a wonderful, wonderful turn. God bless you, Rose. Love you. Take care. All right.
You too.
Bye.
And that's all we have time for, folks. Remember, injustices can happen to you, and they can happen to me. And by the way, they did. But together, we can make a positive difference. Be sure to watch for Fight Back Legal Abuse 2, coming in late 2023. And you can always go to my website, rose-colombo.com, rose-colombo.com, Colombo, good old Sicilian name. And remember, you are never alone when you listen to Colombo Chronicles Live, and be sure to get a copy of the political satire international award winner, Obama-saurus.
Obama-saurus, the new book by Rose M. Colombo, is an updated version of a political satire that reflects the political roadmap of today's world, written with an Orwellian twist. Will humanity survive or suffer depopulation or extinction? Obama-saurus by Rose M. Colombo, available at Amazon.com.
Well, my friends, time flies. And now is the time to say goodbye. Thanks so much for being part of the Colombo Chronicles family. You are appreciated. Please do it now. Bookmark. Push that like, share, and follow button. Oh, and don't forget to comment below and stay in touch. Make your family part of the Colombo family. Until next Wednesday at noon, remember, God loves you, and so does the Rose.